So good. What a great night already. So good to see everybody here. All the way to the wall. It's just exciting. And electricity in here is so beautiful. If you're a guest today, we're so glad you're here. You know, one of the great privileges that I get in my life is I get to travel a lot around the world. And you get to experience new architecture and new restaurants and new cafes and new cultures. But what you always walk away with are the incredible people you meet. And it's just a reminder to me that no matter where you go in the world and no matter what you get to experience, the greatest gift you ever get in life are people. And if you're here as our guest tonight, we just want you to know we are so honored to have you here with us. And yeah, come on. And we just pray that tonight would be one of those nights that you'll never forget. One of those moments that you'll always look back to and say, that was a moment my life changed for good. That was a moment where things accelerated and the future I always longed for became my reality, became my life. And so I want to take a moment and pray for you. And Jamar, I just think it's funny when you said you're so grateful this story of your life of being single is coming to an end. And I also noticed, Kenzie, you did not stand up when he asked you to. You're already acting like you're married. and so, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. So we're going to pray for you guys, too. Let me tell you, one of the hardest things to do is to be in a public space like a pastor and to get married and to figure all these things out in a public arena. And so we want you to know that you guys are in a safe place. We're going to cheer you on, and every time Jamar messes up, we're gonna help you get him right. And JBK, she's gonna do everything right. And we'll all just celebrate that. So let's pray together. Father, thank you so much for this beautiful night, this incredibly beautiful community. And God, I pray for every single person that is not only within the walls of this place, but has joined us across the world. And God, whether they're here or somewhere on this planet, I pray that they would have a deep sense of connectedness right now. That in this moment, we are all together. We are all a people. We're all a community. And God, I just thank you that you see each one of us so intimately and uniquely. That you know who we are, you know what we've been through, and you know what we need. And so that's my prayer, God, that you would have such a profound conversation with each person, that they would find it impossible not to trust you and to open their lives to you and to let you create in them the person they've always longed to be. They just didn't know it was possible. We thank you, Jesus, and we pray in your name. Amen. Can we thank God one more time for tonight? And you can have a seat. One of the things I've come to love in my life are my noise cancellation headsets. I don't understand the technology really. In fact, one of my friends, Ray, sent me through Twitter an explanation for how my headsets work. And after I read his explanation, I'm still completely confused. Because when you turn those things on, it blocks out all the noise you do not want to hear. But it does not block out the noise you want to hear, or at least the sounds. Because I turn them on and I'm watching a movie and I can hear everything so clearly. And every once in a while, I'll turn them off just to see if they're working. And then I hear all the noise that I'm completely unaware that's all around me. Then I turn it back on and poof, have a world of absolute silence, except for the sounds I want to hear. And what's happened in our life, because I have my set and Kim has her set, that we not only use them when we travel, now we use them when we go to sleep. It really started with Kim. She started wearing her noise cancellation headsets to cancel me. because it frustrated her that she goes to bed before I do, or she goes to sleep before I do, because she gets up at 4 a.m. to milk our cows, which we do not own. And she goes to sleep so early, but sometimes I'll stay up and I'll watch ESPN, or I'll catch up on HBO, or I'll watch a movie. And of course, I grab popcorn and I bring it up, and the popcorn keeps her awake. So she puts on her headsets to cancel me out. Well, when she started wearing her headsets, I thought, okay, I can do that too. So I started wearing my noise cancellation headsets while she's wearing hers, and we both turn them on and we keep talking. But we cannot hear each other because it cancels us out. And I think this is the funniest thing, that we're actually talking to each other, but we can't hear each other. And we have to take off the headset and say, what? But when we're talking, usually she'll let me know she's about to go to sleep, but she falls asleep in about 3 to 4 seconds. So she'll say something like, I think. And that's it. She's gone, and she doesn't even bother to let me know she's falling asleep. She's just warning me. And it's amazing how there's a technology that can filter out the noise you do not want, but still allow you to, with clarity, to hear the sounds that you need to hear. Oh, I wish I could create this technology for my brain, because I need noise cancellation technology in my brain. How about you? Because I have so much noise in my head. And not only do I have noise in my head, I have noise in my life all around me. There's so much noise. And I understand that I am a part of the problem of the noise in my life, because I'm drawn to the noise, and sometimes I lose the sounds that I need. And that's worse when that sound is a voice, and that voice is the voice of God. It's a terrifying thing if you consider that you might actually lose the ability to hear the voice of God because of so much noise in your life. I'm just going to confess, I sleep with my iPhone next to my pillow. I do. And my iPad next to my iPhone. And so I have a little bit of technology hanging close to me, and it really frustrates Kim. And at night, she's like, are you still looking at your iPhone? So I have to wait till she falls asleep. I just lay there. No, I'm not, honey. And I'm just waiting until she's out. And then I pull up my iPhone. Anybody else do this? And I just check things one more time. And in the morning, when I wake up, she always wakes up before me. In fact, today was a monumental day. This is the first day in 35 years of marriage that I think I woke up before my wife. Of course, she went to bed at 5 because she drove to Lake Tahoe and back. So I guess technically she was up before me. But it doesn't matter. I'm claiming this as the day. But Kim always wakes up before me. And she goes on and does her thing. I don't know, she does life from 4 to 7. And then she'll come in the room, and the first thing I do is I look at my phone. Anybody else do that? I look at my phone, and if I'm looking at my phone and Kim comes in the room, she looks at me with so much condemnation. She just looks at me and has that look that's so dismissive. What are you doing? It's obvious what I'm doing. I'm listening to the noise. What do you think I'm doing? And if I'm looking at my phone when she walks into the room, she won't even talk to me. I'll go, hi, honey. She goes, you're already in the noise. You're incapable of hearing my voice and paying attention. And so I have to time it. When I hear it coming, I put it down. And then I act like I'm asleep, and I go, oh, hi, honey. No one else does this, right? Because none of you are so magnetized by the noise that you begin to drown in it. Well, I noticed how Jesus has this ability to always rise above the noise. In fact, you see this over and over again, because if anyone could have been drowning in the noise all around him, it would have been Jesus. It would have been so easy to miss the conversations that needed to be had just because of all the noise. In Luke 19, beginning in verse 1, we see a moment where Jesus rises above the noise. It says, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, and he was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, Come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. And all the people saw this and began to mutter, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." If there was ever a moment where Jesus could miss the moment because he was drowning in the noise, it was this moment. Jesus was at the peak, at the height of his celebrity. He was a crowd favorite. And the crowds gathered around him. And Jesus would have to walk through the multitudes and hear all these people asking him for whatever they felt they needed that they could get from him. And can you imagine living in a moment where everyone wants something from you, but no one wants to give something to you? And it would have been so easy for Jesus to be captured by every single person who's asking him for something, who's giving him an opinion about not only what he should do, but who he should be, because not only did they want Jesus to do things for them, but they wanted Jesus to be exactly who they thought they needed him to be. So if anyone could have had a crisis of identity, it would have been Jesus. It would have been so easy to reshape his life based on what everyone wanted of him. It's so hard to break out of the noise, isn't it? In fact, this past week, when I woke up and Kim was doing something else, and I pulled out my phone and went to Instagram, and I saw this video of one of my friends, Lewis, and so Lewis, he says, "How do you wake up in the morning?" And I'm like, what? Like this? And it's like one of those Lewis Howes moments. He's like, "How do you wake up in the morning? Do you wake up groggy? Do you take your time? And then he goes through this whole thing. When you wake up in the morning, get up and jump out of bed and make your bed." Don't talk to me like that. Don't condemn me. And he goes, "Make your bed." The first thing, and it's almost like if you don't make your bed first, you're never going to accomplish anything meaningful in your life. And because then after you make your bed, and he makes his bed, exercise, and he's running. He's running down the street. That's how I know Lewis is white. Because I'm telling you, Latinos do not run for exercise on the streets. If you ever see me running on the street, I'm either chasing someone or being chased by someone, so call the police. But I get it, it's white coaching. And so he's running, and he goes, and then take time to meditate, and he's going through this whole thing, and Lewis, it's too early for this. But I got out of bed, and I looked at the bed, and thought, I don't think I've ever made this thing in my entire life. I don't think I've ever made this bed. I go take a shower, I come back, Kim's already made it to make sure I don't get back into bed. She's just, but I thought, okay. I made the bed. Maybe the first time in 60 years of life and 35 years of marriage, I made the bed. And it looked so good. And then I finished taking a shower. And I'm in there brushing my teeth, and I hear screaming. Something's happened. The kid's like, And I go, what's going on? My wife is being attacked. And I open the bathroom door, and she goes, "You made the bed. You made the bed. You made the bed." I'm like, yeah, I made the bed. She said, "Oh, you love me. You love me." She said, there's no better way to show me that you love me by making the bed. And I'm here just cursing Lewis Howes under my breath. Do you see the standard that has just been set in my marriage? And I'm going to be judged by this moment because I'm never doing this again. And so then the next thing he said is, "Go exercise." Well, I couldn't do both the same day. So I waited little small steps. And so the next day I decided I should do part 2. I should go exercise. And so I went to Equinox, where I have a membership, and that's somehow still active. And so I went over there, and it was so crowded I couldn't even work out. I mean, I guess I could have, but it's so crowded, and there's so many people working out who do not need to work out. There are all these people in there acting like they're struggling with their weight. They're like 3% body fat. They're jacked, they're ripped, everything. And they're just running and lifting. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Go eat some pancakes. I mean, they're you. And there's no room for people like me. How are we supposed to get better? It strikes me that Zacchaeus felt extraordinarily inadequate for that moment. There's a lot of contradictions here in this moment because Zacchaeus' name means innocent, but he wasn't. Luke let us know that he's the chief tax collector and he was wealthy, and so he was not considered a person to be admired. And I know it's hard to imagine, but someone who works for the IRS would not be highly valued 2,000 years ago. And at least now there's scale and there's structure and there are laws. But back then, you see, it was the Roman Empire who controlled the taxes. And so when you worked for the Roman Empire to tax your own people, you were considered a traitor. And so Zacchaeus used the oppression of his own people to create his own wealth. So he was despised. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but he was short, which kind of reminds me a little bit of like Danny DeVito or something like that. And he could not see over the crowd. And a lot of us, if we were trying to get to God and we had the smallest obstacle, we go, well, I tried. I gave it my shot. I just couldn't get to him, and he was just too busy with everyone else. But Zacchaeus was determined. So it says he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming their way. So he was short, but he was shrewd. So he figured out where Jesus is going, so he went to where Jesus is going. And there's some of you here right now, and the reason you're here is that you are desperate to find an intersection with God. And I want you to know that that's going to happen in your life. If you are searching for God, I want you to know God is searching for you, and you guys are on a crash course to each other. So he went ahead because he says that was the way that Jesus was coming. And when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and he said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. And what strikes me is that Jesus sees the very person that would remain invisible to all of us. See, if we're going to be like Jesus in this world, if we're going to actually represent him well in this culture, we need to spend our lives looking for the one that no one is looking for. And a lot of times we try to stereotype Jesus. Because so oftentimes people say, well, you know, Jesus only cared about the poor, but I want you to realize Zacchaeus was rich. And so oftentimes we become dismissive about people because, well, they're too successful or they're too attractive or they had too many advantages in life, and we treat people as if almost as if they're too successful to need God. But I want you to realize you will never have a level of wealth where you will not look poor to God. And if you lack a relationship with him, he sees you lost in your poverty. And Jesus sees Zacchaeus. And there's this interesting parallel, this interesting metaphor, because he climbs a sycamore fig tree. Jesus has a unique relationship to fig trees. He saw Nathanael, who was praying secretly under a fig tree, hiding underneath the leafy tree. So no one could see him, but God saw him. There's another time when Jesus went to a fig tree that was out of season, and it was leafy, but it had no fruit. So Jesus cursed it. Then they went to the temple, had a very dramatic moment, and on their way back, the tree was dead. And I thought, what does Jesus have against fig trees? And how can you hold a fig tree accountable for not bearing fruit out of season? What did the fig tree do to make God that mad? But what we realize is the fig tree was a metaphor that the temple was leafy but fruitless. That the religion established in the name of God was leafy but fruitless. That people who are religious are leafy but fruitless. And it's better for us to be withered so that we desperately cry out for help than to be filled with the appearance of righteousness and to be filled with emptiness and brokenness. See, I think a lot of us are dismissive of the Zacchaeus in the world. And I think the reason Zacchaeus climbs this fig tree is it becomes this human metaphor. Zacchaeus is in the fig tree. That's the fruit Jesus was always looking for. The person who was desperate to find God. The person who would not allow any obstacle to give him an excuse from having an encounter with the creator of the universe. The person who was desperate to see Jesus, to not let anything be an excuse. I'm too short. I can't get through the crowd. I can't figure out how to connect to him. I'm a tax collector, so no one would ever invite me into Jesus' presence. I don't know if you're waiting for an invitation, but you need to push your way to the front and find your way to God. Oh yeah, back to Equinox. They ought to have a side gym where you're not allowed to go in if you're already ripped. Right? They have a workout place for people like me in transition, people who are trying to be like that, but 60 years have not got me there yet. 70, it's gonna work at 70. There ought to be a place where if you cannot see your washboard stomach, that's when you can go in. There should be some place where I can stretch without judgment, run without some 22-year-old girl outpacing me 5 times faster than me and not sweating. All these things are troubling to me. And I think that's the way a lot of people feel when they come to church. Like, I'm not going to work out here because everyone already has everything together. They're not looking for me. They're looking for perfect people. They're looking for religious people. They're looking for righteous people. See, I think that we thought the way to help God get the word out was by pretending we were perfect, by pretending we had it all together, by showing the world our washboard abs and our 3% body fat and saying, see, this is what Jesus did. And Jesus, no, what I really want you to show them is your brokenness. I want you to show them your fears and your doubts, your inadequacies, your struggles. Who have you been overlooking that Jesus keeps waiting for you to see? I was in a conversation with our pastor up in Seattle, Pastor Lawrence Fudge, and Lawrence sent me this article about Seattle, which really caught my attention. I want to read to you a little bit. This is the title. Seattle Freeze. That's the title of it. Seattle Freeze. Forget making friends. Half of Washington residents don't even want to talk to you. Okay. It says, forget about trying to make friends here. Almost half of Pacific Northwest residents don't even want to talk briefly to people they don't already know. That's among the results of a recent survey by Seattle-based Pemco Insurance that seems to give credence to the phenomenon known as Seattle Freeze. Northwesterners' reputation for making it hard to form new friendships. About 40% of the poll's 1,200 respondents in Washington and Oregon said it's not important for them to make new friends. That's almost double the number of people on the other side who say it's important or very important to make new friends. It goes on to say, you've heard of FOMO, fear of missing out, right? Well, here we see a lot of JOMO, joy of missing out. People here say, there's a party and I'm not going to it, and I'm glad I'm not going to it. A whopping 49% said they don't even want to interact with people they don't know. They interviewed one long-term Seattle resident, Art Converse, who's 66, and he said, it's real. The people move away because of it. I was reluctant to admit it, but too many people have said, we don't like it here, we're moving away, to deny it. Converse said his daughter, now settled in New York City, says this, I can't stand the people here when she comes back for a visit. You know how it is in New York. You can go into a pub on Friday as a total stranger and be playing ball with them on Saturday, he said. That would never happen in Seattle. Now, let me pause for a minute and point out something. Have you ever been to New York? Okay. Do we have some New Yorkers here? This is almost insulting to a New Yorker to say that New York is warm and friendly. mean, if you've ever been to New York, you know they're abrupt. They're brutal. They don't even see you. They act like you're invisible. Have you ever tried to walk down the sidewalk in New York? They know you're a tourist. They just keep walking and they make you move. They just plow you over. I have never in my life heard anyone describe New York as a warm, friendly place. Except unless you come from Seattle. That's how bad Seattle is. You go to New York and go, wow, people are so friendly here. I just thought I'd highlight that. But here's the dilemma, though. See, if you flip the POV on this moment, Jesus sees someone that is invisible to everyone else. But Zacchaeus, to everyone else, would have seemed to be someone who didn't need relationships, who didn't want relationships, who chose to live in isolation. But let me tell you what the consequence of choosing isolation is. Isolation. And when you come to the place in your life and you say, I don't want to know people, I don't want to meet people, I don't have any room in my life for other people, what we're actually saying is, I don't care about anyone except myself. And the dilemma when you make that decision to care about no one but yourself is that no one cares about you. Then you find yourself in this unexpected place where you're between what you wanted for your life and what you were desperately afraid of. That you would die, live and die alone. Zacchaeus was alone in the world. But everyone who saw him despised him and probably envied him. Isn't it frustrating when people you think are worse than you are doing better than you? It probably incensed them that Zacchaeus, a tax collector who was violating the covenant, the relationship he had with his own people, who was optimizing the oppression of the Romans, who was capitalizing on this economic injustice and becoming wealthy because of it. And yet Jesus sees him. I think it's so easy for us to explain why someone doesn't matter to us. But you'll never be able to explain that they did not matter to God. I was bored yesterday, was flipping channels, was watching this documentary, some interviews, and they were interviewing this one actor who was incredibly talented and successful and wealthy and has accomplished everything you would ever hope to accomplish. And in the interview, he started talking about how he found himself struggling with addiction and depression, and he was struggling to even want to live. And eventually he just had to decide he wanted to live. And as I'm listening to this interview, I thought to myself, no one would ever think this person would have ever needed anything or anyone. But what really hit me was that in this period of his life, when he was in so much pain, carrying so much brokenness, I actually had a conversation with him. We happened to be at the same place at the same time, driving the exact same car. So there was like this coincidental connection in that moment. We started talking. And in my own mind, I thought, he doesn't need me. He doesn't need anything I have to offer. And in the most practical of ways, I decided he did not need Jesus. And yesterday I was sitting here thinking in that moment, I did exactly what I tell people not to do. And it took me over a decade to realize that. I am the guy who saw Zacchaeus and thought he doesn't need anything. He doesn't need God. He wants to live in isolation. Let him. Are you looking for the one that no one is looking for? Are you paying attention to what's happening inside the souls of people rather than being confused by their external success or possessions or wealth or fame or power or whatever it may be? When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house. I love that. Now, this is kind of unusual because so oftentimes Jesus says, come follow me. There was another tax collector Jesus talked to. His name was Levi. He was also named Matthew, and he was a tax collector, and Jesus said, come follow me. And Levi did. But the first thing Levi did, interesting enough, Jesus did not ask him to do this, but he did this. He threw a huge party, invited Jesus, and ironically, the same thing happened when Jesus called Levi out that happens here with Zacchaeus. He says, I must stay at your house. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. And all the people saw this and began to mutter. We don't really use the word mutter much. I think we should reclaim it. Like, there's a lot of muttering happening over at the Laker camp. See how it works? See? A lot of muttering suddenly. And they began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. This is the same thing they said when Jesus called Levi out, because Levi threw a party, and who's going to go to a tax collector's party? Tax collectors. Because tax collectors don't have any other friends. Only tax collectors would go to a tax collector's party. So he had this huge party of wealthy tax collectors and Jesus. And it ruined Jesus' reputation. And Jesus says to Zacchaeus, I must stay at your house. Now, Jesus could have said, let's meet in a neutral place, because it really wouldn't go well. Because Zacchaeus, we know who you are. And every time Jesus said Zacchaeus, it must have cut him, because that name Zacchaeus means innocent, and he's not. It would be so strange to have the only one who's innocent calling you innocent when you know you're guilty. But when Jesus says, I must stay at your house today, not I'd like to or I should, or he says, I must stay at your house. What Jesus is saying is, Zacchaeus, for me to do what I need to do in your life, you need to allow me to invade the space of you. See, I think a lot of us, we don't mind visiting Jesus at his house, but we do not want Jesus to come and invade our house. But if we're going to be Jesus in our world, in our context, in our culture, we need to not only look for the people that no one is looking for, we need to be known for those that no one would choose to know. Jesus sacrificed his reputation to change Zacchaeus' life. And what's interesting is that they said, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. And they said that as if they were not sinners. It's so interesting. If Jesus had gone to be with them, they would have thought, oh, this is right. This works. It's always interesting how we think that God should choose us. But then we really wonder if God is real when he chooses someone else. I get that. I get that, because before I understood who Jesus was, I never heard all these words like faith and grace. They were not real words to me. And as my family came to faith, it was so confusing to me, but especially my brother. Anybody have like a brother or a sister where you have like a sibling rivalry? I mean, my brother and I have a sibling rivalry. Well, we don't. I did. I wasn't his rival. I wasn't his equal. So I was the rival. And we were in the same grade from 1st to 12th grade. My mom thought that was a good idea. And for me and my older brother to be in school at the same time at the same grade, and for me to be the anemic twin. And my brother was a great athlete and also a brilliant human being, so he was frustrating at multiple levels. And then we were at times really tense. Sometimes I remember I had a metal bar under my pillow just in case he decided to beat me up. And it was a tense relationship. So when he came to me and he said that, he was considering the reality of God. So my brother's an atheist. I thought he would never believe in God. And then when he started reading the Bible, I thought that was strange. And he started going to church. I thought that was strange. And then one day when he told me that he gave his life to Jesus, I laughed. I mean, I just laughed. I thought, this is insanity. And I even told him it's just so hypocritical for an atheist to go to church. And then when he said, I've given my life to Jesus, and I said, and he wanted it? And it's like, really, And he goes, yeah. And I remember telling my brother, I remember the exact words I said to him. I said, if God accepted you, he has those standards. And this is, I know, it's cold, okay? It's cold, I know. But you have to realize that this is the relationship that I had with my brother. I remember one time we were fighting, and I had just made a decision because I planned ahead. And I thought, man, if he hits me again today, it's going to be different. So I'd hidden this incredibly large and sharp knife in a room, and we had this fight, and then I went running, and I turned the corner in the room, and I pulled out this knife, and when he turned, I had this knife. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and then he looked at me, and he said, put that knife down, or I'm going to tell Mom when she gets home. And I looked at him, and I said, Alex, you will not be telling anyone anything. I've changed so much. I've grown. I've deepened as a human being. And so when he told me that he belonged to God, I could not conceptualize a world where that could be real. Except when Jesus accepted me. And then I realized, oh, I was right. God has no standards. He'll just take anybody. He just chooses everybody, and he's willing to love even me. See, I think what's astonishing in this conversation is that there were actually people who thought they were better than Zacchaeus, who thought they were more deserving than Zacchaeus, who somehow measured themselves against Zacchaeus and thought they deserved Jesus to come to their house. Let me tell you, everyone Jesus chooses, he's slumming. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but you see, I'm a downgrade for Jesus. The moment Jesus decided to be identified with me, it ruined his reputation. And I've been ruining his reputation ever since. Even when I try not to, I still ruin it. See, when Jesus chooses to identify himself with you, you actually ruin his reputation because you're not him. And as hard as you try and all that you do and as much as you change, if you're honest with yourself, you know that Jesus has really taken a huge dent in his reputation by being identified with us. And then when we come together and we're called the church, oh my gosh. The way we have marked human history in his name, and no one gets it. He invited us into his home and asked us if he could come into our home. And he knew that we would ruin his reputation. Because he's the one who chooses to be known for those that no one wants to know. He steps into our isolation and calls us out and he says, I see you when no one sees you. He says, I want you when no one wants you. I had this brief flashback to high school. I moved from Miami, Florida to Raleigh, North Carolina. And in Miami, I can't remember really knowing any religious people, really. But in North Carolina, it seemed like everyone went to church. They were all like Christians, and they assumed the whole world was Christians. And I was having a conversation one day, because I was new, I didn't know anybody. I was talking to this girl, and I think she was like a cheerleader or something. And it was just a brief conversation, didn't really go anywhere. But the moment she left, these guys came up to me and said, hey, you can't talk to her. I said, why? She goes, do you know what kind of person she is? I said, I don't even know what kind of person you are. I don't know anyone. He goes, well, you can't. And then that was one of my first Christian conversations. They said, you're a Christian. I wasn't. But I wasn't Muslim, so they thought I was Christian. And you can't do that. That's not what you should do. And I remember what I said to them. And I don't know where I got this, because I had never read the Bible. I didn't know anything about Jesus. I was just sort of pulling it from somewhere, you know. And I said, I think that Jesus would actually spend time with people like her. And they looked at me and said, well, you do what you're going to do. But we've warned you. I was right. See, I think a lot of people have been reading the Bible and been getting it all wrong. Because they basically did everything that Israel did. They decided to become an exclusive group that alienates people who do not meet their criteria for righteousness. And if you want to be like Jesus in this world, then see people no one sees. And be willing to be known as the friend of people that no one wants to befriend. Be known for people that no one would choose to know. And this is so, to me, so dynamic and so important in this moment, because I can tell you, I'm always getting all these questions from people on the right and all these questions from people on the left. And everyone on the right wants me to alienate everyone on the left. And everyone on the left wants me to alienate everyone on the right. And people get frustrated going, why won't you choose a side? Well, I did choose a side. I chose humanity. That's my side. Jesus didn't speak against Zacchaeus or his job. He didn't talk against Rome or Israel. He just said, I need to come home with you. Isn't that terrifying that Jesus wants to go home with you? It means he wants to be a part of every intimate part of your life. And then after that, it says Zacchaeus stood up and said, Lord, look, Lord. Here and now, I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. In this moment when they began to attack Jesus and saying, he's a friend to sinners. And what they're actually saying is there's no way he can be God. There's no way he can be the Messiah. He cannot be who he claims to be if he hangs out with people like this. And what Jesus is actually doing is he's turning the tables upside down and said, you do not understand who God is. God is not like you. In fact, if you want to understand who God is, then you need to understand Zacchaeus is exactly the kind of person I came for. This is exactly the kind of house I want to go to. This is why I came. I didn't come to upgrade my reputation. I came to give up my reputation for you. And what I think is beautiful is that Jesus, he doesn't tell Zacchaeus, okay, now my name is on the line. You're now identified with me and I'm identified with you. You need to get your life right. You need to stop being a tax collector. You need to stop doing these things. He didn't try to moralize at all. And I do think it's interesting that so much of Christianity is about trying to get people to act like they're Christians. We are so much more committed to trying to force people to act morally because we do not believe that Jesus actually changes people. But Zacchaeus just acted out of the natural instinct of his soul. He has had an encounter with Jesus. Jesus has invited him into his life. Jesus has asked him, I want to come to your home. I want to live in communion with you. And Zacchaeus sees Jesus' reputation being messed up by his own life. And he says, let me tell you what I'm going to do, Jesus. I'm going to give away half my possessions to the poor. But he didn't say I'm going to give them all up. So there's all kinds of people. See, he's not sincere. He didn't give it all up. He only gave half. Told you, it only works so much. And you hear Zacchaeus saying, I'm going to give half my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, and everybody's like, you cheated a lot of people out of a lot of things, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus never told him to do that. Jesus never told him to do that. Jesus believed that a life-changing encounter with him would be the catalyst for all the good that needed to come. Do you believe that? And then Jesus says, today salvation has come to this house. Not just to this man, but to this house. Because that's how Jesus changes the course of human history, is one life at a time. How he changes culture, how he changes the human condition is one person at a time. And Zacchaeus becomes a lighthouse of hope. Because if Jesus would accept him, who will Jesus not accept? He says, because this man is the son of Abraham. You see, Zacchaeus was of the bloodline of Abraham, but now what Jesus is saying is that how you were born doesn't matter. It's the choice you make in relationship to me, Jesus says, that matters. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. I know we don't like that language, but I don't know if there's any word that better describes the deep sense of despair I had in feeling lost. And we use that language to be judgmental, but actually Jesus uses it to be empathetic. I mean, every once in a while, I wish I was a sociopath. You know, I just feel like sociopaths have such a huge advantage. They don't feel anything anybody says. They don't care about people's feelings. They don't care about people's actions. They don't care about people's comments. And I'm the exact opposite. I feel everything. And Kim and my kids and my friends are always like, don't even listen to Twitter or Instagram or social media. Just get all, because there's so much noise that goes into my head. I'm like, oh, everybody wants me to be something, and I don't know how to be everything everybody wants me to be. You ever feel that way? See, I'm the exact opposite. I'm not only not devoid of empathy, I took this assessment years ago. I had the highest score in the world that they had on empathy. So that means I'm not just empathetic, I'm pathetic. I feel everything. I feel everyone's emotion. I go, oh, someone else doesn't like me, and someone else is mad at me, and someone else is against me, and I feel it all, and the noise begins to clutter my brain and fill my soul with doubt. And then I just have to click the button that says, don't get lost in the noise. Jesus has an amazing way to rise above the noise. Because the moment you pay attention to the crowd, you're drowning in the noise. And you lose the voice that calls you out, calls you forward. And I want you to know that Jesus came to seek and to save the lost. And so if you feel like you're found and you're all good, then Jesus didn't come for you. Yeah, I've had such odd conversations. I've had people tell me, hey, I don't have any problems. I've never sinned. I've never done anything wrong. I go, oh, okay, you're good. They go, what? You go, yeah, but I thought Jesus came to save us and forgive us of our sins and to save us because we're lost. I said, yeah, so clearly you don't qualify, so you're good. I said, but if you ever mess up, if you lose, sometimes you just get out of the zone and you mess up and if you find yourself like me, broken, imperfect, sinful, lost, then I just want you to know Jesus came for you. So if you're here and you're perfect and you've never messed up, you have no internal struggle, no battle that you're at war within, that you're losing, then, well, you don't need Jesus anyway. But if you're like me and like all the people I know, then I have such good news for you. Jesus came for you. He doesn't care what anybody else thinks. He doesn't care what anybody else says. He doesn't care if anyone else thinks you do not deserve God or do not deserve love or do not deserve acceptance. And if we're going to stand where Jesus stands, we're going to say to the entire world, Jesus came for you. We were coming back from Mexico, and Kim and I and this guy, we were walking to the line. This guy was walking in the opposite direction, and he said something to me. But you ever had someone say something to you, but you didn't really hear what they said? And then you responded to what you thought they said, then you realized they didn't say that? That was one of those moments. Because he said something, and I thought he said something else, but he actually saw my hat that said LAFC. And he goes, oh, LAFC. But we had just been at this conference, and we'd seen like over 1,000 people, and everywhere we went to get coffee, everywhere we went to get something to eat, somebody from the conference was there, and they'd say, oh, we're at the conference, or oh, we've been to Mosaic, Mexico. And so I thought he said, oh, I recognize you from the conference, but he didn't say that. Or oh, I know you from your books, but he didn't say that. And he said, oh, he just said LAFC, but I heard all these other things. And so when he said that, I just reached out and said, hi, tell me your name. And he told me his name, and I said my name, and I looked really, really like I was so easily engaged, but I didn't know what he said. And then it was like awkward, because I realized, oh, LAFC. And then we started talking, and he was the kindest guy, and as we kept talking, he said he loves soccer, and we started talking some more, and we're in that line waiting to get on the plane, and I said, do you want to come to a game with me? I'm inviting a total stranger to come to a game with me. And he goes, yeah, I'd love to come to a game with you. And I said, all right, when we get on the plane, give me your information, and I'll invite you to a game. And I thought he probably won't give me his information. A lot of people say, yeah, they will. But then I got on the plane, Kim was on the plane with me, and about 15 minutes later, he finally came. He was on the seat right behind me. Yeah, you ever met someone, and then you met them, and then you met them, and then you met them? Like it was just there all along the way. And he's right behind me, and he hands me his phone, and I put in my information, and I said, yeah, just email me if you want to come. And then he emails me right away. I thought, wow, this is amazing. And then I looked at my schedule, and I said, hey, I checked the schedule. There's a game coming up, and I can't go. I have to be out of the country. So if you'd like, I'll give you, a ticket and some tickets you can go. And he goes, no, I don't want to go to that game. I want to go to a game that you're going to so we can get to know each other. And I said, yeah, that's right. That's what I was thinking too, And I realized, even just in retrospect, that I wear that hat because I love the team. And I know anyone who goes will have an incredible experience. But there's so many of us that are embarrassed to be identified with Jesus because we don't really believe that he's what the world desperately needs. And I wonder if we could just understand that Jesus is willing to be identified with us, how much that would change our willingness to be identified with him. So you come to visit Jesus at this house, but Jesus wants to come home with you to your house. And he wants to go with you into your life. And he doesn't want you to declare him when you have it all together. It'll be too late then. He wants you to be identified with him in the mess of who you are. So that people will look at you and go, what? You believe in God? You go, yeah, I know. I'm thinking the same thing. What? You go to a church? You actually believe in Jesus? How is that possible? I go, I know. I'm working through things. I'm like the guy that goes to the gym that needs to go to the gym, and I'm working my way through. See, the reality is that every honest person is just a hypocrite in transition. We're not who we're supposed to be, but you can't surrender to that. You have to keep allowing God to change you and grow you. And here's the beautiful thing. Jesus never loses you in the crowd. He never tries to use a herd mentality and say, everyone at one time. He looks at you and he sees you for who you are. And if you have climbed the sycamore fig tree just to get a look at Jesus, I want you to know you're going to realize he's looking right at you. Because all that time you thought you were searching for God, it was really God searching for you. And maybe this moment right now is that perfect spot where you and God finally come together and your life has changed forever. Would you just bow your heads with me just for a moment and just close your eyes? Jesus is here. The God who created you is here. The God who loves you and knows you stepped into human history, took on flesh and blood, died on the cross, rose from the dead, and he is here right now asking you to invite him into your house, to invite him into your life. He is ready to be identified with you. Are you ready to be identified with him? It's not God who's hesitant. It's not God who's apprehensive. God is willing to come down to us, but we must choose him. If you're here and you're ready to cross the line of faith and give your life to Jesus and receive his forgiveness and receive his freedom and receive his life in you, I want you to pray with me right now this simple prayer. Jesus, I give you my life. Right now, just whisper it to him. Jesus, I give you my life. I'm telling you, if you pray that, if that is the intention of your heart, if you give him your life, he will give you his life. And your life will change. Just tell him, Jesus, I give you my life. There's no conditions on this. The moment you want to be free, the moment you want to be forgiven, the moment you want God to change your life, he says, yes, I'm in. Just tell him, Jesus, I give you my life. Just stop acting like you're not lost, pretending you're not broken. Stop trying to convince yourself you do not need God. He knows you and he loves you. Just tell him, Jesus, I give you my life. If this is your prayer, I want to pray for you. If this is your prayer, I want this to be your defining moment. I want this to be the moment Jesus sees you in the tree and calls you out. If this is your moment and you pray this prayer, Jesus, I give you my life, I want you to hold your hand up high right now. Without apprehension, right now, without hesitation, just hold it up high right now. I want to see you. Say, yes. I just prayed, Jesus, I give you my life right now. Just hold it up high. Anyone else? Jesus, I give you my life. So beautiful. All over the room. Anyone else? Jesus, I give you my life. Father, I pray for the women and men who in this moment have opened up their lives to you, have crossed that line of faith. God, I pray that in this moment they would know that you see them, that you have heard their prayer and that you have answered that prayer, that you've come into their life, that they belong to you and you will never leave them or abandon them. God, I pray that in this moment they would feel the overwhelming beauty of forgiveness, the power of the freedom that comes when you've been forgiven. I am so grateful, Jesus, that you never came to try to change us by using guilt and shame. You never came to conform us. You came to transform us. And we receive your grace. We receive your forgiveness. We receive your freedom. And I pray that from this moment forward, they would live in that and that you would move from the inside out to change the world around them. We thank you, Father. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Can we just thank God for all those who just responded to him? So good. All right. I want you to look up for a moment. A lot of times people say, all right, I just gave my life to Jesus. I just crossed the line of faith. What do I do now? And we always want to answer that in one real specific way, but I want you to notice something. Zacchaeus' prison was greed. And so his first action was generosity. I cannot tell you specifically what your first action is supposed to be, but I can tell you it's connected to whatever holds you captive. So you take a moment, take a deep breath while we worship. And whatever's holding you captive, that's your first act of faith. Whatever has dominated you, has held you, has controlled you, has pressed you down, and has suffocated you, that's where God wants to begin. And he'll do it from the inside out. You don't need to do it because of guilt and shame. You do not need to do it because someone else expects it of you. It's the freedom that erupts in your soul when God dwells within you. So I want you to step into that freedom tonight and act on whatever God is speaking into your soul. Rise above the noise and listen to his voice, and you will live in that freedom. Let's stand together and sing.